High in the Andes, where the clouds move slowly like drifting ghosts across the ridges, the air is thin and cool, touched with the scent of ancient stone and wet moss. There is a stillness here that cannot be found elsewhere, an enveloping quiet that wraps around the heart like a cloak. You are standing at the edge of a great mystery. The sun has just slipped behind the jagged peaks, leaving behind a smear of golden light that fades into lavender, then blue. Below, in a hidden crease of the earth, the ruins of Machu Picchu slumber under the watchful gaze of twilight. The green terraces, carved like steps for the gods, hold on to the last warmth of the day. The stones, lichen-covered and patient, remember a world long gone. This is where many begin their journey into the Inca Empire, here, among the clouds and condors, the emerald walls and sacred pathways. But tonight, we will go beyond. Machu Picchu, wondrous as it is but one breath in a much larger song. The empire that created it, Tawantinsuyu, the land of the four quarters, was a tapestry woven across deserts, jungles, valleys, and peaks. It stretched over 2,500 miles from what is now Colombia to the edge of Chile and Argentina. More than roads and temples, it was a living world of rituals, rhythms, and relationships. Of whispered prayers to mountain spirits. Of sun-drenched terraces and starlit offerings. Of royal processions and silent runners. A civilization of threads, knots, and sacred geometry. And tonight, we are going to walk its quiet paths. There will be no hurried pace, no dramatic chase through history. Only soft footfalls on ancient trails, gentle voices from the past, and the slow unfurling of stories beneath the Andean moon. We begin not with war or conquest, but with silence. The kind that lives between stone walls and echoing ravines. The kind that speaks more powerfully than words. Let us follow that silence. Let us drift together into the secrets of the Inca Empire, beyond Machu Picchu. The hush of morning. A soft breeze stirs the tall ichu grass. High above, the sun rises slowly over the Andean horizon, gilding stone and valley alike. The world awakens slowly in the sacred valley. A veil of mist parts, revealing a land both ancient and alive, where shadows move gently over the shoulders of the mountains. This is the heart of Tawantinsuyu, the Inca Empire, not in battle or glory, but in stillness, shaped by stone, wind, and memory. We begin in a place the Inca called Cusco, what we now know as Cusco. To the Inca, it was not merely a city. It was the navel of the world, the sacred center from which all things radiated. Here, every street, every stone, every pathway had meaning. It was the earthly echo of the heavens. Picture it now, as it once might have been. The morning sun glinting off temple walls inlaid with sheets of gold. Water channels murmuring down carefully carved slopes. The soft footfall of priests and attendants in woolen sandals as they move along perfectly fitted pathways of andesite. There is no sound of metalwork, no cartwheels, no shouting. Only the rhythm of footsteps, the hum of water, and the whisper of wind weaving between the stones. At the city's heart stood the Coricancha, the temple of the sun, once a radiant marvel. Its inner walls were plated with gold, bright as the first light of Inti, the sun god. Outside, life-sized golden llamas, maize stalks, and jaguars stood as sacred offerings. But beyond the gleam, there was meaning in every placement. Cusco was not just a political capital. It was a cosmic diagram, carefully arranged to mirror the heavens. According to the Inca worldview, the city was shaped like a puma, a sacred animal. The tail stretched into the southern districts, the belly housed the great plazas and temples, and the head crowned the hills at Sacsayhuaman, where massive stone walls stood like teeth watching the horizon. From Cusco, 4 great highways stretched outward, each reaching into one of the empire's sayas, or quarters. These were not mere roads, but sacred lines of energy seeks, radiating from the center like sunbeams. Travel one of these paths, and soon you are descending into the sacred valley. The Urubamba River glides silently through the valley floor, winding between mountains as though tracing a sacred script. On either side, the land rises into terraces, stepped fields that hug the slopes like green embroidery, each level carefully designed to retain warmth and water. The terraces were not only agricultural marvels, but acts of devotion labor made sacred by its harmony with the earth. Listen closely, and you might hear the low hum of farming tools, the rustle of maize in the wind, and the quiet chant of a farmer invoking Pachamama, the Earth Mother, as he plants with care. Here, growing food was an act of spiritual alignment, not production. Every seed was a prayer, every harvest a thank you. Villages nestled gently among the slopes built of stone and adobe, their roofs thick with thatch. Narrow pathways thread through them, leading to small plazas, sun-warmed stones, and springs where the water is always cold, always moving. But above all, there is a sense of reverence. The mountains themselves, Akos, were sacred beings, ancient protectors. Each peak had a name, a personality, a spirit. Offerings were made to them. Coca leaves, chicha, llama fat, and prayers whispered at dawn. The landscape was not just inhabited, it was loved, honored, and obeyed. Let us pause now at Pisac, where the hills cradle a great citadel above the valley. The ruins here are quiet, their walls curved with grace, their stones warm from the morning sun. Far below, the patchwork of fields gleams like gold. The burial chambers carved into the cliffs once held the honored dead, wrapped in fine cloth, cradled by the stone. For the Inca, death was not an end, but a return. The ancestors were not lost. They lingered in the wind, the mountain, the soil. One could speak to them, honor them, even share meals with their preserved remains. In the plazas of Cusco, mummified nobles once sat in council alongside the living. Their opinions were sought, their lineage revered. Time for the Inca was not a line but a circle widening with every season, every generation. Further along the valley, we reach Ollantaytambo, a marvel of engineering and grace. Here, staircases rise in perfect rhythm along the cliffs, their steps wide and shallow, their angles echoing the contours of the mountain. The temples above seem to grow from the rock itself. The great stone blocks, some weighing many tons, are placed with such precision that not even a blade of grass fits between them. They whisper of vision, patience, and mastery. But what's most striking is the flow, the way every aqueduct curves with the terrain, the way light falls on doorways just so, the way the air seems to carry the breath of the builders, still at work in silence. Even the shadows feel intentional. In this world, nothing was separate. Earth and sky, king and commoner, water and breath, all were threads in the same tapestry. A humble cornfield could be a sacred site. A rock formation could be a portal to the spirit world. A footpath could follow the line of a constellation. In fact, the Inca saw constellations not as clusters of stars, but as the dark shapes between them. In the Milky Way, they saw a celestial river mirroring the Urubamba, and in its folds they found animals, symbols, guides. To walk the valley was to walk the sky. The days here pass softly. The light is generous in the morning, golden by late afternoon, and gone suddenly at dusk. Evenings descend with a cool hush. The fires are lit, the stories begin, and the stars return familiar, bright and pulsing with memory. One could fall asleep here, nestled beneath a thatched roof, with the sound of distant water, the scent of wood smoke, and the feeling of being cradled by mountains. And so we come to understand, the Inca heartland was not merely a place, it was a living story. One of balance, of quiet power, of belonging. Let us rest now among these valleys of gold and silence. Let the stones remember us, as we remember them. And when we rise again, we'll walk deeper still into the divine mysteries of kings, gods, and golden temples that breathe with the past. The early light of day spills softly across the mountaintops, gold on stone, warm on skin. A wind stirs the air, carrying the faint scent of fire, wool, and wet earth. In the sacred valley, where the sun first crests the horizon and kisses the highest peaks, a figure once stood, robed in gold, still as the mountains themselves. His name was whispered with reverence Sapa Inca, the only one, the son of the sun. To understand the soul of the Inca Empire, one must begin not with armies or cities, but with this radiant figure, part man, part god, who ruled not only the land, but time itself. He was not elected, he was not appointed. He was as if the mountains had shaped him from gold and breath. His birth, his very being, was believed to be ordained by Inti, the sun god, whose rays gave life to all things. Let us now step gently into his world. Imagine the young prince, born in Cusco, wrapped in vicuna wool, his cradle carved from sacred wood. From his earliest breath, he was taught that he was different, not merely royal, but divine. Servants attended to his needs. Priests observed the stars to chart his fortune. Every step he took was ritualized. Every object he touched was set aside, never to be used by another. He was raised in silence and ceremony. And when the time came after trials of wisdom, battle, and spiritual understanding, he was crowned. But his coronation was not a moment. It was a transformation. In a sun-drenched ceremony, the future Sapa Inca would drink from a golden cup, don a woven fringe upon his brow, the masquipachi, and be borne aloft on a litter of silver and feathers. His feet never touching the earth again, he would become the axis between heaven and soil. To his people, he was Intip Churin, son of the sun. And so the empire became a mirror of his light. Just as Inti warmed the crops and bathed the mountains, the Sapa Inca gave order, purpose, and sustenance to the world. He was the father of all. The court that surrounded him was filled with harmony and grandeur. There was no throne as we might picture it, no crown of jewels or scepter of power. His majesty was more subtle woven into the layers of his clothing, carved into the quiet elegance of his palace gardens, sung in the poems of the Amayudas, the wise men. His garments were spun from the softest vicuna fibers, dyed in hues of crimson and saffron, each strand more precious than gold. He wore tunics that no other could wear. Once worn, they were burned, never reused. His breath, his hair, even his footprints were sacred. And when he walked through the city, he did not walk at all, he was carried. Beneath him, soft petals were laid. Before him, priests swept the path. Around him, nobles bowed, and musicians played songs in his name. Yet, the Sapa Inca was not a figure of arrogance. He was not worshipped for conquest. He was revered for balance, for embodying the ideal of any reciprocity, responsibility, harmony. His role was not to rule and force, but to embody cosmic order. Let us now drift back in time and meet one of the most luminous rulers, Pachacari Inca Yupanqui. The ninth Sapa Inca, and perhaps the greatest, Pachacari was not merely a leader. He was a visionary, a philosopher king. It was under his watchful gaze that the small kingdom of Cusco became an empire stretching across mountains, forests, and deserts. He rebuilt the capital into a reflection of the heavens. Under his guidance, temples rose like prayers in stone. Roads threaded the mountains like silver veins. Rituals expanded, not in cruelty, but in celestial elegance. And though he wielded power, he did so with a reverence for time. For him, the past was not dead. The ancestors were present, and the future lived already in the minds of those unborn. His name, Pachacati, means world shaker, but he moved with grace, not fury. After him came Tupac Inca Yupanqui, the explorer king, who pushed the empire to its farthest reaches across rivers and snowfields, to the edge of the known world. He brought back stories, peoples, treasures, and knowledge. But still, his rule remained quiet, measured by ceremonies, not bloodshed. And then Wana Capac, proud and patient, oversaw the empire in its final, fullest form, a golden age, before the tide turned. Within the palace walls, the daily life of the Sapa Inca was carefully choreographed. He awoke to soft music. His first drink was chicha blessed by priests. He met with noble advisors in courtyards, perfumed with flowers and shaded by carved wood. He received delegations from every corner of the empire, from the dry coastal kingdoms, the Amazon lowlands, the high Puna herders. Each brought tribute, cloth, pottery, feathers, and stories, and each was met with calm, sacred hospitality. In return, the Sapa Inca offered not just gifts, but unity. In Inca cosmology, the emperor was the bridge between the three realms. Hanan Pasha, the upper world of gods and stars. Ke Pasha, the world of the living. Yuku Pasha, the inner world of ancestors and roots. He moved between them through ritual fasting, offering, and meditation. At certain times of year, he would climb high into the mountains to commune with the Apis, the sacred peaks, or descend into caverns to make offerings to the earth's deep soul. To be emperor was not merely to rule. It was to carry the burden of cosmic balance. Even in death, the Sapa Inca did not vanish. His body was preserved, mummified, and cared for by attendants known as Panaka royal kin, who maintained his household even after life had passed. These mummies, seated on golden thrones, were clothed, fed, and consulted. They were paraded through the streets during festivals. They owned land. They received tribute. Death was not the end of power, it was a transformation, a continuity. The sun never truly set. When the Spanish arrived, they did not understand this world. They saw gold and conquest. They saw kings and cities, but they did not see the breath of the divine in every ritual. They did not feel the weight of silence behind every stone. They did not hear the rhythm of the sun in every heartbeat of the people. And so, with muskets and horses, they unraveled what they could not comprehend. Yet, the memory of the divine kings lives on in the stones of Cusco, in the threads of a weaver's cloth, in the reverence still shown to the mountains, in the whispered Quechua lullabies of highland mothers. The Sapa Inca may no longer walk, but the light of Inti still shines on his people. Let us close our eyes now and see him there standing in the courtyard of the Coricancha, the golden fringe on his brow catching the morning light. Around him, the empire holds its breath, not for fear, but for awe, for order, for light. He does not speak. He does not need to. The sun has risen, and with it, the living God walks among his people. The sun rises gently over the spine of the Andes. Its golden fingers stretch across high cliffs, threadbare trails, and hanging bridges made of grass. A hush remains, broken only by the wind soft as breath, steady as memory. Before there were wheels, before there were maps, before there were words on paper, there were feet. Feet running across mountaintops. Feet touching sacred stone. Feet carrying the thoughts of an empire across rivers, deserts, forests, and snow. The Inca did not write, at least not in the way we do. They left behind no books, no scrolls, no ink-stained pages. Yet theirs was a civilization of astonishing communication, built not on parchment, but on paths, people, and threads. This is the story of those threads. Let us begin where the world narrows a stone path carved into the cliffside, barely the width of a human step. Below, a river roars in silence. Above, condors drift like smoke. And on the trail, a lone figure appears. He is young, lithe, focused. A Chasqui, a messenger of the empire, moving swiftly along the royal road. He wears a short tunic of wool, his hair tied back, a pouch at his side, and a quipu bouncing lightly on his chest. His breath is steady, his pace is practiced. For he is one of thousands who carry messages across the Inca world, not with ink, but with memory. These runners formed a living web, spaced every few kilometers at tambos, or way stations. Like links in a chain, they relayed messages with speed that defied the ruggedness of the terrain. Some carried spoken news. Others bore coded bundles of knotted cords. But all of them moved with purpose, because the road itself was sacred. The Inca road system, known as the Capacón, was one of the most ambitious networks the world has ever seen. It stretched over 25,000 miles, weaving through nearly every climate and elevation imaginable. From the sun-scorched coastlines to the cloud-kissed peaks of the Andes, from jungle to salt flats, the empire was stitched together by stone. These were not simple trails. They were engineered marvels, paved in places with smooth stone, drained with skillful water channels, bridged by suspended ropes made from ichu grass woven tight by hand, strong enough to bear soldiers and llamas alike. Some paths cut into cliffs. Others crossed plains marked with stone cairns. And at the empire's center, in Cusco, all roads converged, radiating outward like the rays of Inti, the sun. But these were not highways of commerce alone. They were arteries of ceremony. Along these roads moved not only messengers and soldiers, but processions, priests bearing golden statues, nobles traveling for festivals, llamas laden with gifts for the dead. These paths pulsed with the movement of a people who believed that motion itself was sacred. Step now into one of the tambos, the roadside lodges scattered across the empire like beads. Here, the Chasqui pauses. He takes water from a ceramic jar cooled in the earth. He rests his legs for a moment beneath the woven awning and rises again as another runner appears. In a silent exchange, the message passes. No writing, no scroll, just a breath, a glance, and a whispered number. And then he is gone. The road continues. But not all information was spoken. Some of it was knotted compressed into chords known as quipes. The word quipu means knot in Quechua. These were not decorative items. They were the lifeblood of Inca administration, flexible tools of memory, mathematics, and mystery. Picture one now. A long central cord from which hang dozens, even hundreds, of colored strands. Each strand knotted in patterns, some tight, some loose, some clustered, others spaced with intention. The cords vary in color: ochre, blue, white, maize yellow. Each shade holds meaning. Each knot a number, a symbol, a story. To the untrained eye, it may seem chaos. But to the Quipucamayak, the keeper of the knots, it was as legible as ink. They could read quantities of people, stores of food, tribute owed, herds counted. Some believe they also preserved songs, genealogies, even calendars. But more than record keeping, the Quipu was a philosophy, a visual language of relationship. It didn't just hold data, it described it relationally. What belonged to whom? What came after what? What was owed, honored, harvested, or remembered? The threads did not simply carry numbers. They carried meaning. Now imagine the imperial tax collector arriving in a village. He brings a quipu rolled in a woven pouch. The villagers gather. The Quipucamayak steps forward, unfurls the cords, and runs his fingers across the knots, pausing at each group, eyes half closed in focus. He speaks aloud the account. How many llamas were given? How many sacks of maize are due? The people nod. The record is updated not with erasure, but with new cords added, new knots tied. Nothing is forgotten. Everything is woven in. The Chasqui carried quipus between regions. In their pouches, they held not parchment, but pure, tactile intelligence records that could be felt, counted, interpreted. Even today, many quipus survive. Some are archived in museums, their chords silent, their meanings half remembered. Scholars continue to debate. Were they purely numeric? Were they mnemonic aids? Or were they a complete writing system one, still waiting to be fully understood? Perhaps, like the road and the runner, the quipu was never meant to be fixed. Perhaps it lived in the space between memory and rhythm. Perhaps it was not a document, but a dance. There is beauty in the simplicity of the system, and awe in its complexity. A civilization without wheels, without iron, without writing as we know it, yet they governed millions, moved armies, harvested abundantly, and maintained order across mountains. Their secret? Trust in people, in memory, in the sacredness of movement. To walk the roads was to enter into communion. To tie a knot was to declare that something mattered. To receive a quipu was to be held in the weave of the empire's mind. As night falls on the trails, the last chasqui of the day approaches the village. Children run to meet him, their eyes wide with excitement. The fire is lit in the plaza. The elders gather. The quipu is laid out like a storybook of chords. And beneath the starlight, it is read aloud not in letters, but in rhythm, color, and touch. The threads of the empire remain, not in their fullness, but in their echoes. In the footpaths still used by farmers. In the bridges still woven by hand each year. In the textiles passed from mother to daughter. In the memory of people who understand that knowledge need not always be written, it can be carried. And so, as we trace the lines of the old roads with our minds, and let our breath fall into the rhythm of the runner's pace, we come to see this was an empire not just of stone and sun, but of thread, of connection, of motion, of quiet, enduring memory. Let us rest now beside the tambo fire, beneath the breath of stars. The road is long, the journey gentle, and the threads still stretch across the land, humming with stories. The morning mist rolls low across the earth, brushing the feet of the mountains like a veil of breath. The stones lie still, waiting. The wind carries silence. There is a quiet that lives in stone, a patience, a knowing, a memory older than words. The Inca understood this. They did not simply build with stone. They listened to it. They shaped it, not by conquest, but by conversation. And while Machu Picchu sits like a crown among the clouds, it is not the only sacred site to hold the breath of the empire. Scattered across the Andes are other places, quieter, older, often forgotten, where the Inca carved their prayers into the mountains. Come, let us walk among them now. Above the city of Cusco, where the air thins and the clouds drift low, stands Sacsayhuaman, a place of mystery and majesty. At first glance, it appears a fortress. Towering stone walls, each block immense some, weighing over 100 tons, fitted with such precision that no blade of grass can pass between them. But Sacsayhuaman was more than a military post. It was a sanctuary, a place of ritual, alignment, and ceremony. The walls curve in a zigzag pattern, echoing the teeth of a great puma, an animal sacred to the Inca. And when viewed from above, it becomes clear. The site was not built for war, but for meaning. The very layout was symbolic. Step closer and touch the stones. They are cool, smooth, worn. You feel the labor in them, the generations of effort. No mortar binds them, only skill. The sun moves across their surface like a caress. At solstice, the shadows fall in exacting rhythm. Here, festivals like Inti Raymi, the festival of the sun, were held. Thousands gathered. Music filled the air. Priests offered golden vessels of chicha to Inti, and the Sapa Inca stood at the center, not as ruler, but as the sun's earthly voice. Even now, if you sit among the stones at dusk, you can almost hear it, the low beat of drums, the chant of the priests, the distant cry of a conch shell calling the spirits. Follow the sacred valley north, and you will arrive at Ollantaytambo, a city carved into the cliffs where stone meets sky and water runs as prayer. This was a royal estate, a ceremonial complex, a military outpost, and yet it remains utterly peaceful. The stonework is refined, deliberate. Terraces climb like stairways to the heavens, each step a breath closer to the gods. At the uppermost platform sits the Temple of the Sun, its wall unfinished yet breathtaking. 6 massive pink granite monoliths stand side by side, perfectly aligned, their surfaces etched with sacred motifs. Each stone was transported from a quarry miles away, moved across valleys, lifted up slopes, not by wheel or beast, but by human will. Water channels still run clear beside the steps, whispering their soft, ancient song. When the wind moves through the corridors, it hums through narrow doorways in a voice that feels not of this world. Look east, and you'll see the mountain face across the valley, shaped by nature and carved by hand into the image of Tunuba, the Andean god of storms and balance. At dawn and dusk, the light touches this face as if to awaken it. Everything here, each stair, each shadow, each echo, was made with intention. West of Cusco, hidden in the highlands, lies Moray, one of the most enigmatic places in the Inca world. At first, you see only the outline, a series of concentric circles carved deep into the earth. But as you descend, the wind falls away. The temperature shifts. The air becomes still. These terraces were not ceremonial in the traditional sense. They were experimental, a kind of open-air laboratory. The Inca used Moray to study agriculture. Each level had its own microclimate. Crops were tested, adapted, refined. Potatoes on one level, maize on another. Herbs and roots, each in their place. Yet even here, science and spirituality were intertwined. The circles spiral like a fingerprint of the cosmos. The center feels sacred. Some say the terraces mirror the Chicana, the Andean cross. Others say it was a calendar. Still others believe it was both. A place to feed the body and align the soul. Stand at the lowest point and look up. The sky becomes a perfect ring above you, and you feel small, not diminished, but centered. High in the cloud forests, wrapped in mist and jungle, rests Choquequirao, the cradle of gold. Often called the sister of Machu Picchu, it is grander in size and quieter in spirit. It was a final refuge, a place where Inca resistance endured after the Spanish arrived. Built on ridges that defy belief, the terraces plunge into green valleys and staircases vanish into cloud. Here, time moves slowly. Orchids bloom in silence. Hummingbirds dart like spirits. The ruins are still being uncovered, stone by moss-covered stone. Llama figures are carved into terrace walls. Ceremonial platforms face the mountains. There are no trains here, no crowds, only the long breath of the forest and the soft creak of the earth remembering itself. To arrive is to earn it. The journey is long, the climb steep, but the reward is solitude and the feeling that you are walking in the footsteps of those who refuse to let the empire fade quietly. Each of these sites is a temple, not just in structure, but in soul. They were built to last, but not to dominate. They do not rise in defiance of nature, but in harmony with it. The stones were shaped to echo mountains, the walls aligned with stars. The doorways framed the rising sun. Even the smallest detail, the angle of a step, the curve of a channel, was placed with care. To enter these spaces is to enter a conversation, not loud, not forceful, but steady, listening, echoing. And if you stand still, if you quiet your breath and open your senses, you may feel it. A pulse in the stones, a vibration, the memory of hands that built not for glory, but for belonging. So let us sit for a moment upon a sun-warmed terrace, a stone still bearing the marks of time. Let us close our eyes. The mountains breathe. The wind carries incense of memory. The stones hold silence like an offering. And we, at last, are still enough to listen. In the silence before dawn, the world holds its breath. The stars shimmer like scattered seeds across the heavens. A chill clings to the earth. And somewhere, On a high ridge in the Andes, a priest lifts his eyes to the east, waiting for the first golden thread of sunlight to pierce the horizon. The Inca were watchers of time, not just in days and seasons, but in breath, light, and shadow. To them, time was not a line, it was a circle, a spiral, a pulse. It moved with the sun, danced with the moon, rippled through rivers, and echoed in the wind. Time was sacred, measured not by clocks, but by mountains and stars. This is the story of how the Inca told time not to control it, but to live within it. Not to conquer the cosmos, but to listen to it. High above, in the vast Andean sky, the Milky Way called Mayu in Quechua arcs like a river of milk, mirroring the great rivers below. For the Inca, this celestial river flowed with meaning. Within it, they saw dark constellations, not groups of stars, but the shapes of darkness between them. A llama, a serpent, a fox, a mother and child. These were not abstract signs. They were living guides, animals of myth and earth whose appearance in the sky signaled the seasons. When the llama rose in the east, the time of planting neared. When the serpent slithered across the heavens, it was time to prepare the canals. The Inca used stone pillars, called sucancas or intihuatanas, hitching posts of the sun to track the solar year. At the solstices and equinoxes, the sun aligned perfectly with carved shadows and doorways, casting beams that confirmed the cycle's turning. But the calendar was more than science. It was song. Each season brought not just labor, but ritual. Each turn of the year was honored with offerings, music, dance, food, and fire. The Inca divided their year into 12 lunar months, each with its own purpose and ceremony. These months, though without written names, lived through tradition, memory, and celebration. Raymi, time of the great festival Inti Raymi, when the sun reached its furthest point and was called back with reverence. A new year began. Choquequirao, time to prepare the fields. Rituals were made to Pachamama, the Earth Mother, asking her blessing for planting. Moray, season of the maize harvest. Great baskets of corn were brought forth, and feasts honored the fertility of the earth. Between each month were observances, fasts, dances. The calendar was not kept in books, but in footsteps and firelight. The sun was the great marker. The moon was its companion, and the stars, silent and watchful, were the keepers of memory. To the Inca, time was alive. The past was not gone. The future was not waiting. Both lived in the present, like breath in the chest. The Inca did not see history as something left behind, but something carried forward. The ancestors were not dead. They were with them in the wind, in the stones, in the mountains. Mummified nobles were brought out for festivals, seated at council, offered food and drink, treated with warmth and ceremony. Each harvest carried the memory of the one before it. Each birth was a continuation of the line. This cyclical view brought not fear of aging, but a deep trust in rhythm. In Inca cosmology, the universe was divided into 3 sacred realms. Hanan Pasha, the upper world, where the gods and celestial beings dwell. Home to Inti, Mama Killa, and Alapa. It is the world of stars and light. K Pasha, the middle world, where humans live. This is the realm of daily life, of labor and community. A world of reciprocity. Yuko Pasha, the lower world, a place of roots, ancestors, and the unseen. Not a place of fear, but of origin. It is the realm beneath the earth, accessed through caves, springs, and burial sites. These realms were not separate, they coexisted. A sacred cave might be a passage to Yuku Pasha, a mountain peak, a gateway to Hainan Pasha. Life flowed between them, in constant exchange. Ceremonies often invoked all 3 realms at once. Offerings buried in the earth, prayers spoken to the sky, and songs sung by the living. To mark the calendar's turning, the Inca held festivals, not of indulgence, but of sacred joy. The most important was Inti Raymi, the festival of the sun held at the winter solstice. On this day, the Sapa Inca would lead a procession from the Coricancha temple in Cusco to the ceremonial plaza. He would greet the rising sun with open arms and offer golden cups of chicha poured into the earth. All of Cusco would gather dressed in woven finery, chanting hymns, lighting fires. The sun's journey was renewed, and the people, too, were renewed. Other festivals honored the moon, the stars, the rains, the first harvest, the end of morning, the turning of the seasons. Each was timed not only by the calendar, but by the behavior of nature, the blooming of a flower, the migration of birds, the rising of a certain star. Time was not measured. It was felt. The Inca built with the cosmos in mind. Many of their temples and cities were aligned with celestial events. Machu Picchu is aligned with both solstices. Light enters its sacred chamber at precise angles, marking the year's flow. Intihuatana stones were carved on high platforms to observe and tie down the sun, keeping it from wandering too far. Even rural shrines, called wakas, were placed in alignment with star paths, river flows, and horizon points. These alignments were not decorative. They were bridges between realms. Through them, the Inca stayed in dialogue with the cosmos. The priests of the Inca were watchers. They studied the heavens not with telescopes, but with stone pillars, pools of water, and centuries of observation. They watched eclipses. They traced the movements of Venus. They understood the importance of lunar cycles. They named the dark constellations, listened to the rhythm of rains, and adjusted the calendar with a grace born of generations. To be in harmony with the heavens was to be in harmony with the earth. Though the empire has passed, the sacred calendar has not faded. In Andean villages, the Quechua people still mark the solstices. They still bury offerings to Pachamama before planting. They still raise their hands to the sun on cold mornings. Their footsteps echo the cycles of their ancestors. Even now, the sky above Peru is red not just for weather, but for wisdom. And for those who pause on a mountain ridge at dawn, beside a stone aligned with the stars, the rhythm can still be felt. It is in the stillness between moments, the hush before sunlight, the gentle spiral of time folding in on itself. Let us close our eyes now, beneath the stars that once guided kings and farmers alike. The river flows above and below. The past breathes beside us. The future reaches back. And we, for a while, are suspended in the sacred rhythm of it all. Morning mist clings to the terraces like a dream it has not yet lifted. Birds call from the stone walls. A farmer kneels in silence, pressing his fingers into the cool soil, not as a task, but as a ritual. In the empire of the Inca, food was not just sustenance, it was sacred. To plant a seed was to make a promise. To harvest a crop was to receive a gift. The earth was not owned or tamed, it was loved. This chapter is a quiet walk through the fields and gardens of the Andes, not to rush, not to reap, but to understand, to feel the deep harmony the Inca cultivated between land, sky, and spirit. To the Inca, the earth was not inert, it was alive. It breathed, responded, remembered. They called her Pachamama the Earth Mother. She nourished all, but only if respected. Before each planting, before the first furrow was carved, offerings were made. Coca leaves, chicha, llama fat, prayers whispered with cupped hands. A hole would be dug, and a portion of the first harvest returned to her. It was a reciprocal relationship. She gave, they gave back. This was the principle of Ania sacred exchange that defined all of Inca life. To care for the land was to care for the divine. The Andes are not gentle. They rise and fall like frozen waves, steep and stony, unpredictable. But the Inca did not fear the mountains. They embraced them. Instead of forcing the land to yield, they shaped it. They built terraces and dunes that stepped along the slopes in long, elegant rows. Each terrace retained water and warmth. Each prevented erosion. Each mimicked the curves of the earth, rather than resisting them. From afar, these terraces looked like green calligraphy lines written in the script of sacred geometry. Some terraces were narrow and winding. Others were vast, carved into hillsides like amphitheaters of fertility. But all were precise engineered with drainage canals, retaining walls, and breathable soil layers. This was agriculture as architecture, not just functional, but beautiful. The Inca cultivated a remarkable range of crops adapted for altitude, soil, and spirit. They grew over 3,000 varieties of potato, each suited for a different elevation and climate. From the small nutty oca to the creamy papa amarilla, each tuber was prized not just for taste, but for its personality. They were dried, ground, fermented, shared. Maize, or corn, was sacred. Its golden ears resembled the rays of Inti, the sun god. It was brewed into chicha, used in ceremonies, and sculpted in gold for offerings. Fields of maize were blessed with dances and music. Other crops included quinoa, the mother grain, rich and resilient; tarwi, a protein-rich legume; amaranth, called kiwisha, with tiny seeds and vibrant leaves; ají, hot peppers for flavor and medicine; coca, sacred and medicinal, offered in every ritual. These were not just foods. They were companions. They had spirits, stories, uses beyond the material. The circular terraces of Moray, which we visited earlier, were more than beautiful. They were experimental. Each level created a unique microclimate. The Inca used this site to test which crops grew best at which conditions. It was a living laboratory, guided not by conquest, but by observation. They learned from the land, adjusted, adapted. Even now, modern agriculturalists study these techniques to improve sustainability. The legacy continues quietly beneath our feet. Work in the fields followed a spiritual calendar. Farmers rose before dawn, offered prayers, and listened to the call of the mountains. If a shadow fell a certain way, if a bird called from the left, they waited. Signs mattered. Planting was done in community. No one farmed alone. The village gathered, sang, and moved in unison, tools in hand, feet bare on the earth, backs to the rising sun. Harvests were stored in stone granaries, called kolkos, which used ventilation and altitude to preserve food for years. These stores were not hoarded. They were shared, redistributed in times of drought, war, or illness. No one went hungry when the land was honored. In the heart of Cusco, near the Temple of the Sun, lay a most unusual garden. It contained no living plants, yet it shimmered with life. It was the garden of gold filled with life-sized replicas of maize, corn stalks, birds, butterflies, and insects, all sculpted from gold and silver. Each piece was an offering to Inti and Pachamama, a tribute to the abundance they made possible, a recognition that beauty, too, was a kind of harvest. This was not wealth for hoarding. It was gratitude, made permanent. Llamas, alpacas, and vicucas were companions in labor and sacrifice. Their wool clothed the people. Their presence warmed the fields. Their bones and blood were used in rituals. No part was wasted. Each life was honored. Even insects had their place. Bees for honey, butterflies as omens, birds as messengers. The farm was not a machine. It was an ecosystem, a web, a prayer made visible. In the high Andes, where the clouds drift low and the wind still sings through terraces, Quechua and Aymara farmers continue the old ways. They plant with the moon. They offer coca to the soil. They store seed in clay jars, carry knowledge and memory, and share the harvest with the village. Their tools are simple. Their wisdom is profound. And as they press their fingers into the soil, they are not only planting food, they are planting history, identity, belonging. So let us rest now, in the hush of late afternoon, beneath the long shadow of a mountain. The fields are quiet. The harvest is complete. The earth has been fed, and so have we. In this moment, there is no hunger, only gratitude, only the breath of Pachamama, warm beneath our hands. The sun sets gently over the highlands. The terraces are quiet. The river glows like molten gold, winding slowly beneath the mountains. There is no sound of conquest here, only the soft breath of dusk and the memory that lingers in the stones. The Inca Empire did not fall in a single day, nor did it disappear completely. It shifted, adapted, endured in silence. This is not a story of collapse. It is a story of transformation, of resistance not only in arms, but in song, in language, in ritual. The echoes of empire remain in the faces of descendants, in the lines of prayer, in the flight of the condor. Let us walk slowly now through the twilight of an age not to mourn, but to listen, to understand how something sacred can be broken, and yet not lost. In 1532, under a sky the Inca had read for generations, strangers arrived from across the sea. They came not on foot, but on horses. They wore metal. They spoke of kings and crosses. They brought with them fire and sickness and names never heard before. Francisco Pizarro and his men entered a world they did not understand, a world of ritual and rhythm, of sacred stones and golden gardens. They did not see the sun as God. They saw it as an object. They did not hear the language of the terraces. They heard only silence. They mistook reverence for weakness and ceremony for slowness. When they met Atahualpa, the last great Sapa Inca, they did not kneel. They seized him, held him, demanded gold. And when the rooms were filled with offerings, they killed him anyway. But this is not only his story. Atahualpa's capture was not just a political wound, it was spiritual. He was the axis between worlds. Without him, the bridge cracked. Yet, the empire had already been strained. A civil war had recently ended between Atahualpa and his half-brother Huáscar. The Spanish arrived as vultures in the aftermath, offering gifts, making alliances, stoking division. One by one, the great cities fell. Cusco was taken. Temples were stripped. Statues melted. But something remained. In the deep valleys of Vilcabamba, beyond reach of the Spanish, a quiet rebellion bloomed. The royal family fled into the jungle and established the Neo-Inca state, a final refuge, a final ember. From 1536 to 1572, 4 Sapa Inca ruled in exile. Manco Inca, once a Spanish puppet, turned rebel and warrior. Sari Tapac, caught between two worlds. Tichu Cusi, a voice of peace and compromise. And finally, Tupac Amaru, the last Inca, executed by the Spanish in a plaza lined with silent stone. Yet even his death was not the end. His name became a symbol passed down like a flame through centuries. Not all resistance took the form of war. Much of it was spiritual, quiet, invisible to those who weren't listening. Temples were converted to churches, but beneath their altars, the stones of the sun still hummed. Saints were painted with Andean faces. The Virgin Mary stood atop mountains known to be Apa sacred beings older than Scripture. In the shadows of the cathedral, Quechua hymns were sung to the same rhythms once used for Inti. The chacana, the Andean cross, appeared in embroidery, jewelry, and dance. Coca leaves continued to be chewed and offered. Stories were told in whispers. Ceremonies were held under stars. The calendar kept turning. The empire faded, but its spirit adapted. The Spanish language came with force, but Quechua remained the thread that bound the people to the past. It was spoken in homes, in markets, in lullabies. It survived in proverbs, in the rhythm of footsteps on mountain paths. It carried not just words, but worldview, a sense of place, balance, and sacred duty. Today, millions still speak it, not as a relic, but as a living tongue, an echo that has never stopped speaking. In 1780, over 2 centuries after the conquest, a man named José Gabriel Condor Conqui, claiming descent from the last Inca, took the name Tupac Amaru II. He led a rebellion against colonial oppression. He marched with banners of the sun. He spoke in Quechua. He called not only for freedom, but for remembrance. He was captured and killed, but his name lived on, whispered, written, raised, and today it still lives carried in the names of villages, in music, even in movements far beyond the Andes. The ruins remain. Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, Choquequirao, Moray, but they are not ruins. They are witnesses. In the highlands, the Inca spirit lives on, in weavers and stone masons, in farmers who plant by the moon, in children who run barefoot along trails older than memory. Festivals like Inti Raymi are still celebrated. Offerings to Pachamama are still made. The apis are still greeted in the morning. The calendar still turns, gently. Tourists come and go. But for those who live in the shadow of the empire, the Inca are not gone. They are present not as statues, but as ancestors. Not as myths, but as memory. So let us return once more to the terraces, now bathed in the light of evening. A young girl walks the edge of the field, her footsteps soft on sacred stone. In her hand, she carries a seed. In her breath, a prayer in Quechua. Around her, the mountains listen. The empire has changed, but it still whispers.